Can America be saved? Now, that's if you believe America's being eroded or being destroyed in some way, shape, or the other. And I, generally speaking, believe that. I do not believe we are in a catastrophic conflict or we are coming up on one that is like another world war, basically. Is it possible? Yes, I do believe another world conflict involving basically all the major powers being in some kinetic altercation. But can America be saved? Now, what do I mean by that? Well, let's determine what is America. Is it the people? Is it the government? It's both. But what make up the people? Okay, let's get down to that. Let's describe America first as its government. We were founded on a constitutional republic, or in short, a republic. Because most republics, historically, including the one we're kind of built off, which is the early or Roman Republic. The Roman Republic was constitutional, a separation of powers and everything like that. A divided government that's indivisible. I know. How does that make sense? How are you both divided and indivisible? Well, we're a federal constitutional government, or a federal, not a federal constitutional, a federal constitutional republic, or just a federalist republic. It's hard to explain because we got different states. And federal, okay, let's get back on track. We're a republic. Let's just stick with the simplicity of things. We have a constitution, we have delegated and representative powers. Those powers are divided among 3 different branches, blah, blah, blah. As an American, you should kind of know the general idea of how the government kind of works and everything. I'm not saying you need to be a civics master, but having some foundational idea of how the government operates, because it is kind of complex, because now we've kind of built this idea that judges can dictate what a law, or interpret a law, therefore making law. Even though they're not supposed to interpret law, they're supposed to enforce the law in a way, but they interpret law. And if you get to interpret what the law says, you kind of get to make a new law with your interpretation. I know that doesn't make a lot of sense to some people, because some people don't have the capacity to understand. Interpretation is actually not good when it comes to government. Basically what I'm saying as a whole is our government is very complex. That's for a reason. Slow governments cannot act fast in anything. Now that's bad in some cases, because when your government's falling apart from the inside, your people are being attacked from the inside by its own institutions, agencies, and bureaucracy that it created. Because all great governments create bureaucracy, even monarchs. Bureaucracy is the steps to tyranny or corruption. Bureaucracy is a form of corruption, basically. Not directly, not indirectly, but somewhere a little bit of both. My point is, where was I going? What is America? What is its government? We're a republic. We delegate powers to certain branches. Those powers then are checks and balances. And I'm even a big believer that even the states are supposed to be a part of that checks and balances. And I believe the founding fathers even state that the states are supposed to themselves be a check on the system that they implemented. Now, throughout the course of America and its 250 years, we have dealt with what I like to call is, and I'm forgetting what I call it, precedential doctrine or precedential theory. So every time you set a precedent, a new precedent must be set. Now, governments love setting precedents. Thomas Jefferson and the Louisiana Purchase. Nowhere in the founding documents does it say that the government can purchase land. But they used the tariffs and treaties, article thingy-mabob to dictate that they're just making an agreement with another country, and that a purchase agreement basically is what they did. Thomas Jefferson didn't agree with purchasing it without amending the Constitution, giving the government power to purchase property for Louisiana Purchase, which is a precedent and which is important. Now, while Thomas Jefferson highly disagreed with purchasing it without amending the Constitution, he did it anyways. He's a hypocrite, and that does not necessarily make him a bad man. All great men are hypocrites, believe it or not. Faced with hard problems, you miss the decisions you make and the actions you take are going to be considered controversial. Either way, precedential theory is once that was in place, there is no longer any question on what the government can do in its next action in similarity. And that means the government continued to purchase land and take land as it felt necessary. And that's how we end up with the 50 states, Puerto Rico, Guam, and whatever else we currently kind of own, in a sense. But that also leads to Abraham Lincoln. And he's not the next president to set precedents or a judge to set precedents. In fact, when the country first founded, within the first decade, there was precedents being set. When our founding fathers were still alive, judges were setting precedents. Which is crazy, because the first judge to do it is now why we roll on a system of interpretation and not a system of just follow the law, judge. And since nobody is in control of the judicial powers, we get a country that runs on interpretation. Either way, Abraham Lincoln, considered one of the great presidents. We have multiple monuments. We've named stuff after him and everything. And while I have always kind of disagreed with some of the actions Abraham Lincoln took, such as Abraham Lincoln, his controversial things that he did, suspending habeas corpus. That allowed suspected Confederate sympathizers and others to be detained without normal immediate right to challenge their imprisonment in court. I know, controversial, and oh, the South was only about slavery, so, like, we needed to fix that issue. And it's like, Abraham Lincoln has very little evidence that he even cared about ending slavery for the reasons that you think, that he thought, like, black people needed to be free. And there is some evidence of that, but it doesn't mean he actually liked black people. Let's be honest here. Like, there's not much evidence for it. He did find slavery to kind of be immoral, but so did the founding fathers, and so did many people of that time. It wasn't just Thomas Jefferson that thought it was, or not Thomas Jefferson, but Abraham Lincoln that thought it was morally wrong to enslave people. Like, he's not the first in America to think of that. It's just, how do you end slavery and not have some animosity? I mean, Thomas Jefferson has a huge rebuttal to ending slavery without some amount of colonization, and remigration, all this other stuff. Either way, he arrested civilians, political opponents. This is Abraham Lincoln again. He used military tribunals for civilians, restricted newspapers and communications. The dude was a tyrant. Let's be honest here. Now, if we go back to the Roman Republic, the Roman Republic actually had a system in place where they would vote in or elect, just say vote in. They really elected a person. And Cincinnatus, we'll call him Cincinnatus. But there's a guy, he's one of the first, if not the first, to be elected into the dictator position. This position was only for emergencies, where both the republic was under risk of its own collapse from inside and an outside force. Cincinnatus, he I believe 90 days is what the dictator is given by the republic's law of Rome. He did it in less than 90 days and gave the power back to the branches of the republic, to the government powers, to the original government powers. Now, Alexander the Great really didn't. He kind of stayed in power and everything. And we can argue whether or not that was good or bad for Rome and the rest of Europe and the rest of the world as we see it today. But that's not what this conversation is about. This conversation is about, can we save America? Now that I've kind of given you precedential theory, if that's even a real thing, I'm going to consider it a real thing. And we've kind of discussed that presidents have kind of set precedents. And this has kind of led to more and more precedents being set. What can really different branches of government get away with? And I haven't gotten into judges. I haven't really gotten into the Senate, the pure democracy and voting for the Senate. Well, who decided this stuff? You know, the erosion of the Constitution, the erosion of the Republic. Let's get this straight. The Constitution only dictates what the Republic is. The Republic is really the people that agree on having a republic. The Constitution doesn't make the republic. The people make the republic. The republic requires a lot, by the way. The republic isn't just some government that exists in the ether, and the hard concept about a republic is it requires more duty, it requires more obligation, it requires moral standing of its citizens. More than any government ever. To uphold a republic requires Republicans, the people that make up the republic, the citizens, at least a good portion of them, to hold this together. A monarch requires the king, the royal family, to hold the monarch together. A democracy requires just random people. Communist requires the unification. The deliberate force, it requires zero obligation. It requires a centralized government to force everybody to do what it wants them to do. It unilaterally spreads out everything, and it has two classes. I'll call them classes because I don't know what else to call them. It has the government, plebeians. That's it. The workers, the government tells everybody what to do, and there might only be a couple people up here. Millions down here, hundreds of millions, and in some cases, billions. I don't think there's a nation with billions of people. There's nations close. But either way, you know what I mean. I'm frog voicing here. A republic requires us, the citizens, to hold it together. Because the Constitution is only as good as the paper that it's written on. And I do believe constitutions, republics can change, but they must hold its core identity to stay a republic. We have more and more had politicians, news agencies, the people that operate these news agencies and the people that work at these news agencies and the different branches of the government, different NGOs, all these different things in America that talk about democracy. We're not a democracy. One, not a single mention of democracy anywhere in the founding documents of the United States of America. Now, if you consider the Federalist Papers as founding documents, which I will not argue, they do mention democracy. They insult it. They call it mob rule. They call it all sorts of different things. Weekend governments. They say that it's immoral for the mob. And all democracies end up becoming corrupt relatively quickly. They did their best to stay away from this form of government. They spoke about voting, not democracy. They spoke about electorals. They spoke about representation. They did not speak about at all democracy in our documents. This must be spoken about. Now, we've kind of determined what our government is and kind of isn't. While a republic can be a lot of things within it, such as open and free market, which I believe that all republics need some sort of market that is by the people and kind of for the people. Now we can argue that monarchies can have an open and free market, and I do not disagree with this. I do not disagree that democracies cannot. I do not believe that some forms of Marxism cannot have some form of a market for the people and by the people. A liberal market, I'm using this term in the classical sense, which is freedom. A free market isn't always perfect. There's winners and losers. And sometimes there's major winners, really good winners, and really, really bad losers. Like, they just can't get ahead generationally. Don't get me wrong, I believe we have switched into a more government-ran market. And I will still say that it's fairly for the people, but it's also slightly against it. I believe the government does pick and choose winners, and it's been doing that for a long time, and I'm highly against it. While I do believe that we do need military contractors, we need loyal and secure military contractors. I do not believe in making the rest of all of the other industries, such as farming, technology, communications, extremely hard to operate in as new businesses. But let's move on. I said culture makes up a country. It's people. I do not believe people and culture can really be separated. Now, can there be different cultures within a nation? Yes, but the founding culture, the stock culture, the foundational culture must be there for a nation to stay stable. We can argue that Rome fell because of this. But anyways, what's the foundational culture of America? Is it guns, freedom, speech, right to religion, right to talk bad about your government? Yeah, sure. We can argue that. That's part of the culture. It's part of the culture that you can really say whatever you want to anybody without the government coming down on you and jailing you or fining you. Has it happened? Yes, and recently. But that's not really the foundational culture of the West, of Europe, of America, of Rome. Foundational or foundation culture of America, Europe, the West in general. I believe all of the West, or the majority of the West, majority of Europe and America have this foundational culture to them. And it comes all the way back to Roman Republic, Greco-Roman Empire, also known as the Roman Empire. We got to give Greece a lot of credit here for that, and I do. But it all comes down to the Germanic tribes that became German, the Spanish, the French, all the revolutions across the West, across Europe. All this built our foundational culture. Now, what is that foundational culture? And I believe everybody has an opinion on this, and you are welcome to that. And scholars, other people will argue with me on this. I believe that foundation is built on liberty. Its citizens basically being free. Free from its own government. Now, not necessarily free. I do believe that freedom, in order to be passed on to the next generation, requires duty and obligations. It requires an oath. It requires pride to that oath. But what is that foundation? It's hard to put into one word. It's hard to come up with one direct foundational word for that culture. It really is. Civic duty, constitutional law, law in general, representative government, liberty, free markets. I just don't know what single word or two words can be used to describe the republic. Not the republic, my bad. Western culture, American culture, because there's a lot to it. And I believe all nations, all people across the world would have an issue describing their foundational culture. But I believe if you just open your eyes and look out to the vastness of the world, you will see these foundational cultures. And I consider it much like the word love. We have this word, but it is hard to describe. It is hard to put an exact definition to it. It's hard to measure. You cannot use math or science to describe this word. But we know what it is. Consciousness, same thing. But foundational culture, does it exist? I believe it exists just as much as I believe that love exists. Just because we cannot describe it, just because we cannot put a single word or a single couple of words to define it, does not mean it does not exist. And America's erosion, America's downfall, is because of the foundational culture being eroded. The foundation that made the constitutional republic you are in, if you're an American. I do not believe that everybody anywhere in the world can adopt such a foundation. Now, can they act out the culture? Can they be within the culture? Sure. I think Japanese people do a good job anywhere they go. I think a lot of Chinese people do a pretty good job anywhere they go. I think Europeans do a terrible job anywhere they go because they must implement their culture into everything as much as they can. And this isn't unique to Europeans. I think the Japanese do it too. I think the Chinese do it. I think the Japanese and Chinese are a little more rule-oriented. They don't mind following other people's rules so long as they agree with them. But for whatever reason, Europeans always kind of want to make their own rules and implement their own societies, wherever they go. And that's why I think Europe has a foundational culture, is that they've done this to themselves over and over and over again. Countless civil wars, countless border wars, countless warring nations throughout Europe, forcing us into what we have now, for better or for worse. I think for better. Now, we've kind of described the things that kind of make up America, and we've kind of described why it's kind of eroding. You know, the government is the republic. The culture is foundational, and there is a foundational culture. You don't have to agree with that, but let's just say there is an American culture, and let's say we could put some words on it: freedom, liberty, civic duty, blah, blah, blah. Now, if you agree that the country is falling apart, and you do agree with me that it is, the government is being eroded, the republic is being eroded, and that culture is being eroded, how do we fix that? Maybe you don't have the answer. Maybe most of the answers you heard just sound like a bunch of words. And I guess I probably won't do much better for you. You can click off now, go to a different video, but I'll try to put it into words. And I don't have any of this written down. I do have my phone in front of me. I don't have anything on it. That means it might change. But either way, I don't have a script written. I don't know how to read a script. I don't read well. You know, I stumble through sentences and words and stuff and everything. I'm very bad at reading out loud. Pretty all right reading in my own head. But what can we do to prevent the erosion? One, cultural foundation. I believe that culture, government, they line up fairly well. I'm not saying for everyone that is a thing, but I think for most European nations, their culture and their governments are pretty close to being a good match for their people. I think even monarchs in the Middle East, royalty, does pretty good for their people. And I'm not saying any one government is better than the other in every single way. Now, I believe a republic in America is the best form of government for America and people that want to be American. Now we can discuss who should be American. I won't get into that because I want people to actually see this video. Either way, one, you cannot let anybody from anywhere into your country. If their culture does not match some foundational reality to your culture, you should not let them in. Now, are there exceptions? Sure. Do I believe that Chinese can be in America successfully and do the things? I've already mentioned that. I think they follow rules pretty well. They act them out. I do not believe a Chinese person could become a British person, though. Let's be honest here. They don't look British. Oh, you can't judge everything based on looks. Yeah, sure. But can a Chinese person live multi-generationally in America successfully, performing their duties, doing all this, doing all that, their civic duty, working hard, contributing, living an old life, having children? Sure, I believe they can do that. But we can't just let in anybody. And I don't believe in letting in a bunch of random Chinese people. I don't believe in letting in a bunch of random African people, random Egyptians, random anything. I believe they should be heavily selected and vetted to the point where we know exactly who they are and everything. And I believe to my core that naturalization should be a thing that can be taken away. I know that's hard to hear. I know that's outside of the realm of the accepting West. The idea that the West, America, should be accepting of everybody. I disagree. I do not believe that I have an obligation to other people over there that don't care about me, that just want to abuse the systems that my ancestors created, that the founding stock of this nation died for, suffered for. Believe it or not, it isn't until recent history that a large majority of America prospered. Most of the children, most of the adults, basically everybody, 99% of America, suffered in poverty. They did not have much, if anything at all. The government gave them nothing but a republic. Do with it what you will. Benjamin Franklin, paraphrased. Don't quote me exactly on that, please. In fact, put the quote in the comments. We need to implement systems where it's hard to become an American, because being American should be hard, because it requires you to uphold the Constitution. It requires every citizen, as many citizens, and I get it. There's going to be people of founding stock that have been born here that do not uphold their duties, do not uphold their obligations, and I will feel responsible for that founding stock. as an ancestor to this country, and I'm okay with that. But I do not believe in bringing people in that are not founding stock, putting them here, naturalizing them, and letting them, their offspring, and anything else that comes from them erode this country. Now, if they naturalize because they fit all the perfect spectrum of things, and then 10 years down the line they decided to break some of those things, naturalization should be stripped from them and they should be forced out of this country, in the immediate action taken towards them to remove them from this land. Some people might call that remigration. A remigration act might actually help this country. I'm not saying violence needs to be taken. I'm not saying mass remigration against current, old-standing nationals. By nationals, I mean people that have been naturalized in, like, let's say, not counting the last 20 years, but let's say the last 50 years up until that 20-year period. Those people have multiple generations here now. I don't think we can take much action against them. I'm trying to stay away from the word moral. Why would I stay away from the word moral? They don't care about your morality. Some of these people don't care about your moral standing. Therefore, why should I care about the actions taken towards these people if they're moral or not? Now, I'm not saying commit atrocities. No. I'm not saying being violent. I'm not calling for action to violence. I'm calling for action to men, and mainly men, to uphold their duties to this great republic. You know who you are. You know what I'm saying. You know the importance of this. The erosion of men not being masculine, the erosion of men in government, the erosion of the government itself is because of men. Men not speaking out. Men not telling other men to shut up. Men not telling their wives, this is not their place. This is not your burden. This is my burden. Men, you must bear the burden. You will get blamed for the downfall of this country. You will get blamed for every war this country gets into. You will get blamed for your women being a little immoral. Men will get blamed for everything. No matter how egalitarian, no matter how feminist your country is, men throughout all of history, especially in the West, Roman, Greco-Roman, all of Europe, have always blamed the men. Always. You know why that is? Because we bear the burden of that blame. That's how it's always been. That's how it's always should be. Because we bear those burdens, the societal burdens, the natural burdens, the governmental, the cultural burdens. We deserve to govern. Now, you can disagree with that if you want. Deserve, a right to, the duty to govern. I might be wrong, and I'm willing to be wrong, but I don't think I am. And I don't need some Pew report. I don't need some statistical thing. I don't need some historian to tell me about these queens and these female baddies. No. I could just use my own two eyes. Just open your eye and you see the natural hierarchy. I'm getting into my next video, and I won't do that to you. Men, you will be blamed for all the atrocities. You will be. Hitler's mom's not blamed for Hitler. You know what I mean? Alexander the Great's mother is seen as a saint. We don't blame our women. I'm done. Now, do I think there's issues? Do I think we can discuss things about the different agendas and our responsibilities? Yes. But at the end of the day, you need to go out there. You need to be masculine. You need to be a father. You need to be a good representation of the country. You need to perform your duties and your obligations to your country to the fullest of your capability. If, obviously, your capability is not there for certain things, you're not obligated to perform certain duties. I'm not smart enough to be a politician. I cannot fix this country by going within the political realm of politics and becoming a governor, a senator, or anything like that. I do not have that capability or patience. Therefore, my duty is not there. But if you do, hold up, not that I can't be a politician. A guy like me shouldn't. A guy like Herrera, can't remember his first name, he's the AK guy. He shouldn't be a politician. But you know what? I'd vote for him. I think over the years he's gotten good at speaking. But he's not a politician in my opinion. I don't think Donald Trump is either. I don't think Joe Biden was either. I don't think Barack Obama was. I think the last great politicians we have are long gone and dead. That's not to say that today that there hasn't been good candidates to be politicians. One of them they got rid of. Permanent. His name's Charlie Kirk. Now, I could be a politician. I could do those things. I could gain the patience. I don't want to. One person that was probably born with those things was Mr. Kirk. I'm not saying there wasn't issues with his company, and I don't know all of them. I don't give a shit. about them. Honestly, just don't care. Now, obviously I care that they got rid of him. I think he was a highly influential man, and I thought he was very well spoken. He understood this was a republic, not a democracy. That's a different video. Where I'm going with this is you can perform your duties or different duties to the republic and to your family, your community, and your friends in many different ways. It does not have to be one set of duties. That's how you do it, or one set of obligations, or anything deterministic or concrete like that. Just doesn't really, it's hard to put forth at such a large group of people. Smaller groups of people, yeah, you can be a little more commanding, but you can't expect every man to know all the politics. You can't expect every man to know how the system operates. By system, I mean like all the systems, the highway system, the agriculture business. You can't expect people to master these things throughout their life. I do believe in the polymath. Culture is important, people. And I do not believe culture can be divided from a person. Culture is indivisible. A culture is part of who you are. You're born with some amount of culture you're born with. I'm not saying that societies and cultures have not changed. I'm just saying that you are born with something that you cannot be separated from. Now, maybe you can work throughout the generations to separate yourselves from certain aspects of your ancestry, sure. And some people should. There's this one area on the map. It's really shitty. I think many people call them shithole countries. Those are probably some ones that have some cultural issues. You can argue with me that those are environmental, or that that's from European colonizing thing, endless wars, blah, blah, blah. I just think those are bad excuses. But anyways, let's end this video. If you guys got anything to ask, say, do, whatever, here's the comments. I know I'm kind of all over the place, but that's why it's called Anything and Everything. And in fact, I thought about changing the name, but I don't know what to change it to. There's a lot of good names out there that I've taken. But you guys go ahead and continue on. If you don't have an answer for something, that's okay. If you've got questions, no answers, or you don't know, or everybody's got all these answers to your questions, but they just don't seem to be hitting the spot. They just don't seem correct. That's okay. I'm sure if you came to this video, the few people that do, I probably didn't answer all your questions. I probably never will. A lot of good men just aren't around anymore. Good men that can answer those questions, or the good men that could, they don't have a platform. They're not in politics. They're not on the news. You know, these good men are probably in your community, or they got rid of them. I don't think we should allow that. Anyways, comment, like, subscribe, usual YouTube stuff.